everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today, I'm going to be going over my wrap up for May. I'm going to be going over my top books from the month, a couple of my worst books, and briefly go over some of my stats. But it was a pretty great month. We did have the Mafia Romance Readathon going on that Jen from the Bookreview's does, and that was always a great time. But let's go ahead and dive into my wrap up for May. Okay, so I'm actually going to start off just briefly going through some of my stats. I don't have too many stats. I need to start putting together some of my genres and tropes and things that I read per month, but I don't have that this time. Just the really brief stats for you guys. Before I go through those, if you are new to this channel, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, comment, even if it's with emoji or something. I appreciate it. So to get started with my stats, I did read 32 books in May, which is good. I think it's definitely decent. It wasn't as good as I wanted to do, but the last week of May was really tough for me. In May, that last week, I only read 4 books. One of them was read on June, so it doesn't even count for that. But if you are new here, also, I do weekly wrap-up, so I'm not going over every book that I read in May. I used to do a mid-month wrap-up and end-of-month wrap-up, but I decided to do weekly because my videos would be really long, and they're still pretty long with my weekly wrap-ups. So make sure you check those out. I do have a playlist of all my weekly wrap-ups, and you can see how difficult my week was for the last week of May. So 32 books I read. I had 11,945 pages read, 7 arcs, which was pretty good. I get stressed out when I have too many arcs. So my good spot is between 7 and 8. So I want to try and keep it at that many arcs. 15 ebooks, 1 physical book, and 16 audiobooks. Obviously, that might not totally add up because I did listen to an audiobook and physically read a physical book. So those are kind of combined there. I had 1 6-star read, but it wasn't a new read. It was a reread. So, it wasn't a new 6-star, if that makes sense. I had 13 5-stars, 1 4.5 star, 10 4 stars, 3 3.5 stars, 2 3 stars, 1 2.5 star, and 1 2 star. So I will go over those later briefly, but I did have a couple really bad books for me this month. So those were tough. I did notice in my genres that I think I read 10 mafia romances. So you can definitely tell it was a mafia romance readathon. And I do tend to read a lot of mafia anyways. But let's go ahead and go into my top books. So in this video, I'm going to go over my top 5 reads for the month. I have one that was obviously the 6-star, but it was a reread. So I didn't really want to count that as my top 5 reads so I could give my other books a chance that were first time reads. So obviously the 6-star I'll briefly mention is Twisted Emotions by Cora Riley. This is one of my favorite mafia romances. If you are not new to this channel, you've seen me talk about this multiple times. Nino Falcone is top book boyfriend for me. He is amazing. I love him and Chiara's romance, how patient he is with her because she was victimized as a child. And, he knows she has sexual trauma and he works through it in a really beautiful, slow way with her. And for that reason, this will always hold a special place in my heart. I love it so much. So I'm not going to go too into it because I've talked about this book a lot, but I absolutely loved it. And this time I also listened to the audiobook. And it was narrated by Teddy Hamilton. So Teddy Hamilton doing Nino was just perfection for me. So I would highly recommend the audiobook. But yeah, it stays a 6-star for me because I just love it. Okay, So the top 5 that I have, the first one I want to bring up is Not So Truly Yours by Julia Wolf. Julia Wolf has been killing it, especially with this series. This is the 4th and final book in the Harder They Fall series. And it's kind of like more billionaires and that type of thing, adults like type of romance compared to when she writes as J. Wolf. And I absolutely love this. P.S. You're Intolerable was one of my top 10 reads from last year. And this one was amazing too. This is Miles' romance. And Miles was such a great character because he kind of comes off as a playboy, doesn't take things seriously, wild child kind of guy. But that's from his friends and his brother's point of view. I think he's very underestimated and there's so much more to him. He is a golden retriever, sweet, very attentive man. And, you know, in this book, he's been sober for a while, but he has not like brought it to his family or his brother's attention. They haven't even noticed. And that like is just really sad. And the heroine notices that in this and she really fights for him. And that was like one of the special parts of this book to me. So in this, we have Miles and Daisy, and this is kind of like a reverse Grumpy Sunshine. Daisy's a pretty grumpy chick. She, you know, she's a really good chef and kind of has this interesting idea where she makes these amazing muffins and then she makes these charcuterie like cups. And she kind of serves them at this bar. He happens to help his friend out at this bar one night and sees her eat like her muffins when he shouldn't have been eating her muffins. And they kind of have a rocky start at first, but she ends up kind of realizing that this could be a really good kind of like a catering little business that she could do. And she, you know, needs some help. And so she gets offered this business that kind of helps future entrepreneurs or whatever to kind of start up their company and how to grow it. And this happens to be the business that Miles runs with his friend, Shorsha, and she's from a previous book. And so she comes there for help and ends up getting paired with Miles. And Miles basically proves to her like he's a badass at his job and he really wants to help her be successful. But the problem is that the town really views her family badly because they're like morticians and do all that kind of stuff. So they kind of view them badly, which is kind of sad. So they have and stuff has happened, tragic stuff in the family that has made them look down on even more. So she's like, I don't know how I could be successful because of the way people are prejudiced or treat me. And so he decides, let's fake date. I will use my rich, you know, my great status as an Aldrich to help you. And we'll get you in the door at these society parties and introduce you to people. And then you'll be able to grow your business. So they kind of do this fake dating thing. She goes like out to like this cabin with him and his friends. And that's kind of when she sees how they treat him. And they don't even realize that he's like sober and that he does so much. And he's such an amazing guy. They like really become friends. And then obviously that leads to more. And I just love how she stepped up for him. And then I loved Miles' relationship with her younger brother who is getting severely bullied. And, you know, he's in a very bad place. And Miles, like, really reaches out to him and builds this relationship with him. So I just love this. You know, it's just another amazing Julia Wolf romance. The hero is just so swoon-worthy. And I just love this series. So I would highly recommend you check out Julia Wolf. If you haven't already, get started because she's blowing up. And I think she's just getting better and better. Okay, the other one that I loved was Brutal Ambition by Sam Mariano. This is basically kind of like, you know, it's connected to the Royal Elite series, but this kind of steps away from it a little bit and it's like more secret society. And I gotta tell you, I freaking loved this book so much. It is thick. It's a thicker book, but I flew through it like I always do with Sam Mariano. You know, she's one of my favorite authors. She writes heroes that are freaking off the wall, crazy. You know, Carter Mahoney's my top man. And I gotta say that the hero in this, his name is Killian. He was one of the sweetest San Mariano heroes I've ever read, and it was a kind of nice change, especially with the obsession with Dare. Everybody loves Dare from Even If It Hurts, and we have a lot of stuff leading up to Dare again further in the series, and I don't really like Dare. So it was great to see another hero that was like sweet. Don't get me wrong, he's gonna push boundaries and he's gonna do some crazy things, but I thought he was amazing. So in this, he's part of this secret society, the Blue Bloods, I believe it was called. And he kind of hears about these kind of wannabes trying to recreate this, like, you know, thing that happened for his secret society way back, where they kind of like all teamed up on like a virgin. It was like a virgin sacrifice kind of thing. So he goes to kind of check it out at this Halloween party. And this poor girl, she's basically kind of invited, and, you know, the guy was purposely going after her because she knew she was a virgin. And when she gets down in the basement, there's all these guys there, and they're gonna, like, you know, rape her and attack her. And so Killian manages to rescue her, and they kind of run for their lives. But she like knows who these guys are. They know who she is. So she's kind of in a dangerous spot. So he basically says, "You're staying with me." And, you know, when she wants to go back home eventually, he still doesn't want her to go. It's another cat kidnapping that he does. Kind of like another one of her books. But so they basically kind of like are staying together in this, and they start to get kind of sexual. There's a little bit of dubious consent, but not really, because he kind of waits longer than her usual heroes do. But eventually he's like, "We're doing this. I'm not waiting to have sex with you anymore," kind of behavior. So I really loved this. I thought it was crazy. I think there's a couple other guys in here that are like crazy, typical San Mariano scary guys that I really want their books, which is crazy. I don't know how Sam does it. So I absolutely love this one. It was such a fun time. Okay, the other one that I have is Darkest Sins by Neva Altaj, and this is, I forgot to write it down. I think it's the 8th or 9th book in her Perfectly Imperfect series, and this is my favorite so far. This is an assassin romance. This is between Kai and Nera, and, you know, Kai has gone through so much, and he was basically molded to be like this super assassin killer, and he ends up becoming obsessed with Nera. She is a mafia princess, but he didn't really know that. And he kind of becomes like her stalker, because she finds him like on the side of the road, like bleeding out after one of his hits. He's kind of almost, you know, in a bad place where he's just going to give up eventually after one of these jobs, because, you know, he doesn't really want to continue. So he's kind of like just letting himself bleed out a little bit in this alley. She finds him and takes him to this vet clinic where she works and patches him up. But after that experience, he kind of becomes obsessed, and he finds out where she lives, and he kind of like watches her from afar. And like, she's kind of like her protector. He'll like wound himself on purpose so he could go back to her to get stitched up again. And it's just super sweet, like their relationship and how they fall for each other. And I just loved it. Things go badly where they are not able to be together. And so there's a little bit of a time jump, and now he's back in the picture, and he's like, you know, he's going to try and get her. But there's so much more to it, but I don't want to explain any of that because that gives away a lot of like spoilers and big reveals in this story. But it was my favorite one. I freaking loved this one. It was so good. Okay, so then I read A Love Letter to Whiskey. I finally read it by Kandi Steiner. I still have not edited my vlog for this, so I do need to do that and get that posted for you guys, because I did do like an angsty hyped book vlog. And this one, I read the 5th anniversary edition, so I think that's why I loved it so much, because if I would have read the original where it ended, where people were throwing their Kindles and it's so frustrating, I probably would have been upset. But because this is the 5th anniversary edition, we get this extended like kind of epilogue or novella at the end where it's all from the hero's perspective, and we get a better like full ending. So if you don't know, This is one of the angstiest romances I've ever read. It's like the right couple, they're right for each other, the wrong time. And this is between B and Jamie. And they kind of like met in high school. She immediately liked him, but he started to date her friend. And so she was like, okay. So then they become best friends. He eventually breaks up with that girlfriend because it's a high school, thing. Goes off to college. She ends up at the same college as him, but at that time, she's got a boyfriend. So it's just years and years and years of issues, of reasons they couldn't be together, when you just want to smack them upside the head and be like, just be together already. So a lot happens in this that make you just like lose it. I know I did a lot of check-ins on my vlog because it was blowing me away, but I really loved it. I loved the new ending. I just think it was so well done. I think the characters, even though you are frustrated with them, you see them really evolve and grow. So I do think it's a really beautiful. I was like emotional multiple times. So I absolutely loved that. And the last one I want to bring up is kind of a fun, silly one. I love Ruby Dixon, and she's kind of like my comfort read. And I finally started reading the Corsair series, and this book was my favorite out of it. And this is In the Corsair's Bed. And this is between Kat and Tarek, and he actually buys her from a slave to kind of save her and free her, because he sees she's like at death's door. She's really treated badly. She starts off by spitting at him, and he just like, I just want to help you. So he takes her with him and is trying to, like, he's the medic on the ship, and he's kind of considered like the beast or the ugly one. And so he thinks like, he couldn't be with her and that he's not good enough. And he also wants to be careful with her because of her trauma and how she's been treated. And so it's this really sweet, like, dynamic. He is a very big cinnamon roll hero. And she doesn't get it. She's like, she doesn't see him as ugly at all because he's so sweet and attentive to her that she's like ready for them to do something. And he's always just like wants to check consent and is like, you don't have to do anything with me just because I helped you. And he, it's just this weird, it's just cute. Like, I really love this one. These are like really quick novellas. So I really flew through this, but it was my favorite in the series. So it was the only one I gave 5 stars to. So I really, really loved that alien romance. Okay, so on to my worst books for the month. I'm not gonna bring up the 3 stars or the 3.5 stars. I'm only gonna bring up the 2 and the 2.5. So the worst book of the month that I had was actually our buddy read, and that was The Fabric of Our Souls. And I freaking hated this book. I think it was so irresponsibly written about like mental illness or needing help, unaliving yourself, those kind of behaviors. Like, it was the most ridiculous story I've ever read. It's so unbelievable, where this girl tried to unalive herself, and then she has to go to her brother's checking her into this like, kind of a rehab center, but it's really to help her through this and blah, blah, blah. But it's an unconventional rehab center type of thing. And they room you with a guy, and then they literally have locks on the doors, things that you could use to hurt yourselves. All the patients are screwing each other, and that's part of the therapy. And it infuriated me, because if you are going to rehab, even for like just addiction, or, if you are needing severe like mental therapy and all this kind of stuff, they don't want you to be in a relationship. They don't want you to be sexually active. And that's part of the therapy. It was just ridiculous. I could go on and on. You really should check out our live show that we did on Bestie Book Reviews channel. I'll try to remember to link that down below, because we all hated it. It was a consensus. We all hated it. It was horrible. So anyways, I'm not going to go too deep into it because I've ranted about it before. The other one that I had was Cruel Paradise by J.T. Geisinger. I think this book was a fucking mess. I hated the heroine. It was basically like a repeat of the first book, just in a different situation. And I really liked the hero, Killian, but the heroine was so stupid, fought this so hard for no reason. He's like this badass, like CIA type of assassin dude that's hiding as Irish mafia. It's just so outlandish. I don't get it. And the heroine was stupid. When you give me an annoying heroine, it's gonna be a bad go for the book for me. So anyways, those are my wrap up. Again, if you want to see every book that I read for May, watch my weekly wrap ups. I go into details on each book that I read every week. And this is more of a brief, just kind of like touch the base on the top and the worst of the month. Thank you so much for watching this. As always, I appreciate you guys coming, viewing my videos, helping me grow this channel. I'm trying so hard to get to those 1,000 subscribers, but it's been a longer journey for me, so I do appreciate you guys. All right, I will see you on the next one.